Mega Maniacs, you're looking at a copy of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 with the not for resale label on the front from 1992, as directed by Masaharu Yoshii, produced by Shinobu Toyoda, and programmed by the legendary Yuji Naka. I love these not for resale versions because clearly it was for resale at some point because I have it. And it appears there was a hanging tag on the back of it as well, and somebody ripped that off. But it is what it is. This is the Sonic that introduced miles tails per hour. And I did not even realize that was a pun back in the day, because I always just thought he was Tails and never thought anything of it. Not for resale on the label as well. And there's even a catalog in here which dates when this was packed in with a Genesis console, because it has an advertisement for the Sega CD to take your system to the next level. I'm not going to take the manual out because there's a tear in the upper left corner, and I don't want to tear it any further. But other than that, it is a really nice manual and a really nice complete in-box copy. Now you will notice that I am once again using the Sega Genesis collection so that I don't have to sync up the audio and video manually by recording one with Audio Hijack and the other with the QuickTime Movie Player. This way, everything is synced up as is, but for the titles which aren't included in the Sega Genesis collection, I will do that as needed. And eventually, in the very, very near future, I will have the Analog Mega, which will make all of this obsolete. I will be able to play anything in HD with beautiful audio and video quality. And hopefully I'll get an Elgato and be able to capture that as well. But one thing at a time, alright? One thing at a time. To be honest, playing it this way on a high definition television, it almost feels too real. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but let me explain. When I played this originally, and I'm talking back in 93, 94, when I had a Sega Genesis in my dorm room and me and my roommate split the cost of it, I got very used to playing this on an old school cathode ray tube TV with a very small screen, sitting in front of it with two controllers, one of us controlling Tails, even though Tails tends to be completely useless. And when I'm playing by myself, I normally just do Sonic alone, but since I mentioned Tails in the introduction of this video, I figured I should go ahead and play with him for this video. But yes, there was a certain, how do I put it, a lack of vividness to it. This seems so bright, and the pixels are so sharp that it almost feels alien to me, because my memories of it are literally much more fuzzy. The picture was more blurry because it was going through a coax RF adapter plugged into the back of the TV. This was not a digital quality picture in any way, shape, or form. Sometimes it could even get knocked off or out of line and the picture would be fuzzy because somebody bumped the back of the television. So this just seems too perfect, and it's really throwing me for a loop as I try to play here because it doesn't click with my collective unconscious memory of the game. But I will make the best of it. The other reason I prefer to play solo as Sonic the Hedgehog in Sonic 2 is because during these Chaos Emerald runs during the tunnels where you have to avoid the obstacles and pick up the rings, Tails always ticks me off because Tails ends up with more rings than I would want him to have, and then he runs into an obstacle and loses the rings that he has, and I fall short of the goal, all because of Tails. Sonic didn't hit the obstacle, Sonic didn't lose any rings. Tails, it's all his fault, so I much prefer playing without him. But for those of us who had a roommate and a dorm room and had this game, having Tails in the game at least gave the other person something to do while the first person was playing. Yes, he's mostly useless. He gets stuck behind obstacles and dies a lot, and is not even able to really do anything other than occasionally collect rings and occasionally bop small enemies on the head. But at least if he's on the screen with you, he can kind of sort of help. He can do a little bit, and you can, as long as you can see him, you can control him. So that's better than nothing, I suppose. But the real fun of this is to play split screen and go head to head and get the best time and the best score. That's when you really have two-player figuratively and literally in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. But since I don't have a player 2 with me, I can't really demonstrate that for you in this particular video. Now, I didn't realize there were achievements in the Sega Genesis collection, but we're just about to hit one here as I'm doing the voiceover. And apparently Tails picked up a ring because suddenly it said, feat unlocked, and then I had the number of rings required to unlock that achievement. The sad part is, if this was PS4, I'd get a trophy. If this was Xbox One, I'd get some points. This is Nintendo Switch, so other than you seeing it right now during this video, I get nothing for it. Speaking of getting nothing, I don't get the 1-up sound here even though I collect over 100 rings. I think it must be because I tripped the goalpost and executed a save point which I could jump into for the Chaos Emerald tunnels. So maybe that's why the sound didn't play, but I sure didn't get to hear it. Now this is where Tails really starts to grind my gears, because there are several points in here where you have to jump over a wall of obstacles, and Tails manages to run into them every single time. The fact that I wasn't timing switching from one side of the tunnel to the other very well is not his fault. I did miss some rings that I didn't need to miss, but he hit some obstacles that he didn't need to hit because he lags behind whenever Sonic does something. If he does it, Tails does it a second later, and that's not fast enough to get out of the way of things. See what I mean? Tails, you just drive me insane doing the Chaos Emerald challenges. And I'm not going to clear the goal here. I'm going to be like 13 rings short. I was closer than that until Tails lost another 10. Thanks so much, Tails. You're a real pal. As long as I'm waxing nostalgic about playing this in college, here's another thing that pops into my head about it. I had a roommate who, then as now, really loved the Colorado Avalanche hockey team, the Avs for short. And while I could occasionally talk him into playing co-op or head-to-head with me on Sonic the Hedgehog 2, he had a much harder time talking me into playing NHL 94. Basically, because he was so into hockey, he got so good at that game that if I was player 2, there was virtually nothing I could do to beat him. I could even score 2 or 3 goals in a period and he would still find a way to win 4-3 because he just had that version of the game mastered on Sega Genesis so well. So eventually it just got to the point when he was going to play NHL 94. It was like, you know what? I'll grab a beverage. I'll sit here and watch. You play against the computer. Put it on the hardest, most difficult settings, whatever. Put it against the best team in the NHL right now and play the Stanley Cup and do whatever you got to do because I'm just going to sit back and watch. And the other reason we like to do that is because for the longest time, there was no cable in our dorm. So it was either watch TV on the antenna or play Sega Genesis or go down to the VAX computer lab and get on the bulletin boards through Telnet, because this was the very, very early days of the internet when the first Netscape Navigator and Mosaic web browsers came out, and there weren't really a lot of websites or things to do on the web or even what you would call social media these days. So it was either talk to friends on bulletin boards or play video games in your dorm room or watch ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, because that was about all we could do. But eventually, they did wire up the dorm for cable, at which point we had MTV, and this was during the heyday of Beavis and Butthead. Now, if we'd had the Beavis and Butthead game for Sega Genesis, that would have been pretty sweet, but we were college students with very limited funds. The Genesis we owned, we bought used from a pawn shop. The games we bought also came from a pawn shop, so we couldn't afford to go buy new games, and there wasn't even any retail store at the college we were going to that had those kind of games. I think maybe we had one Walmart in that town, and it didn't have much of an electronics or a video game department at all, as I recall. No Target, no Best Buy. It was really a dead-end town. I was kind of glad I transferred out of there to a different school after a couple of years. But anyway, I wax nostalgic. I had mentioned Beavis and Butthead, and we got to be pretty good at doing the Beavis and Butthead voices once we had MTV and cable in our dorm room.
That's pretty cool, buddy.
I was always the better Beavis. He was always the better Butthead. So, once again, I fail at the special stage. I blame you, Tails. I don't care how many miles per hour you go, Tails. It's not fast enough. You can't get out of the way of anything. And it's a ripoff that they take away your rings after you do the special stage because the stupid coconut-throwing monkey killed me right there. Totally unnecessary that they take your rings away whether you win or lose a special stage. Why should you have to forego your rings just because you want a Chaos Emerald? Who said you had to trade one for the other? What's the deal with that? It's another thing about Sonic the Hedgehog 2 that grinds my gears. And don't get me wrong, this is in every way a better game than Sonic the Hedgehog. It's got better level design, it moves faster, it's more fun to play overall. But Tails is annoying, and some of the deaths that you get are just so cheap, and there's just things that bug me even as much as I love this game. But graphically, it's beautiful. The music is awesome. I would actually set a tape recorder next to the TV and record Sonic the Hedgehog 2 like it was a soundtrack. This is, like I said, proto-internet days. There weren't websites where you could go to listen to Sonic Hedgehog 2 soundtracks. You couldn't go to YouTube and play a video of it. You couldn't do anything like that. There weren't even MP3s. That file format hadn't even been created yet. There was no such thing. So, we made the best of it. We did what we had to do. And that's what I have to do here is defeat Dr. Robotnik, Eggman, whatever you choose to call him. You take him out, and then you go free all the critters that he had trapped in a container that he had been making into his robot minions. They're free now. Run, little critters. You're free. And you're free to go now because this episode of Genesis Does What Nintendo Don't has come to an end. I'm Mr. MegaManFan. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.